Well, this is a reply video to Barklord, to his non-reply to the suicide subject generally, or the what does it all mean, or it does expand. I mean, the subject it's hard to limit it to any context. So anyway, to the point. I guess I do disagree with your premise in a way. I mean, certainly I'm not saying that anybody, if people want to contrive a purpose, that's fine. I mean, I'm not going to say you can't do that. I'm not going to pass a law that says no contriving purposes, no finding of your own meaning. But there is some value to not living a lie, in my opinion. It's really easy to, the whole ignorance, the bliss of ignorance kind of thing. I mean, it's really easy. If you don't like your brain, you just take a hammer and you knock out a few hunks of it, and it's basically called a lobotomy, and you'll find life a lot more tolerable, because you won't be able to appreciate any of the complexity. You will just live for the sake of living. And there's medications that basically accomplish that. They dull the mind enough to retard its capacity to appreciate subtleties and nuance, the stuff that does trap us, the stuff that can spiral you into depression just because the thinking, it's not easy to get to any of the answers, the real answers. You have to do some thinking to get to them. That's why bliss is comfortable. That's why ignorance is comfortable, is because it takes all the complexity out, which takes all the capacity to see the corroded infrastructure, if you want to call it that. I don't know what the right word would be, or to see the framework that might be flawed. I just have a problem with living for the sake of living, because it isn't free. You just kind of turned it into a game. I've used the game metaphor myself, but it's not a free game. It's not a game that doesn't have any real Dungeons and Dragons in it. I mean, it's got some real nasty, gnarly crap. And depending on how you philosophically look at it, I mean, it's, I don't know what the right place on the scale is of the game. I mean, some might think Poe, it's, you're going into some kind of dark, horrible place, and some other people might say, okay, well, it's not all bad, some of it's good. Well, I'm just saying, but it's no model, no realistic model of what life is. No realistic game is going to be called, whatever, lollipops and candy bars. I mean, it's just not all free. There's risk and danger in living. And even the whole concept, I mean, you use things like keep your soul alive, and, I mean, that's nice, but souls are like snowflakes. I mean, they're all unique, but there's an infinite number of them. I mean, we can, and then especially in the context of how we live in this world. I mean, I've made this point before, but I mean, there are people dying for lack of, vitamins. I mean, there's 2 million children go blind for lack of vitamin A. I mean, sometimes the blindness is temporary, but still, there's significant horrors out there based on, that shouldn't even exist realistically if we, and the whole idea that we would work so hard to keep a single soul alive, like, okay, let's try to contrive you a reason to live, and, we'll tie all this support mechanism up, and we'll do all this stuff just to keep you, playing the game. Well, I mean, I just don't see efficiency in that. I mean, I've used this analogy over and over 5 million times, But to me, it's like spending $10,000 to fix a $10 toaster. You just don't bother doing that. I mean, it's just not. It's not practical. It's not intelligent. It's just stupid. And I know people just aren't going to be able to appreciate that because it's their toaster and they're used to it, and it's their, they kind of love it, and it's, they just can't let go of it. And so it's, let's fix this toaster because this is our toaster. This is an American toaster. This is a toaster in our community, or this is a toaster in my family. And so this toaster must be saved. And I can't argue against that. I'm just saying that, well, I can't argue against it. Yes, I can. I will. I just did. But I'm not saying people don't have a right to think that way. They do. I'm just saying I don't think it's logical. It's emotional. And I just don't think emotion should be guiding our lives. And then there's a whole nother question of this thing of, like I say, if happiness is the goal, if that's all it's about, contriving it any way possible, this enough happiness to make life livable. And I guess happiness in the sense that you shave off all the really dark, horrible stuff, as much of it as you can, and you find a way to say, okay, yeah, I'll play hopscotch and I'll play go fish. And I mean, in a sense, to be happy, you really have to, knock out an awful lot of contextual thinking, because you have to be able to get into interaction and relationships and obsessions and chasing things. And some of those games are pretty silly. Let me play I have to impress a girl game, I'll have to do this, and I'll do that, and you go play the game. And I'm just saying the game is, if you think about the game, you could say, gee, I really don't want to play a nursery school game. And so and there's another argument that it's not even so much that it's a silly game, if you think about it, but in some context, it's a horrible game. Because everybody's definition of acceptable, which is another part of what I've argued for, is that we are way too accepting. I mean, that's why we have World War IV now, is because we accepted it, and we find it acceptable. It's awful, horrible, and evil, but it's acceptable. I mean, everything becomes acceptable. A million people die in a stupid, jerky, dumb-ass war in Africa. Well, it's acceptable. And that's just the way we approach it. I mean, it all becomes acceptable. And then we even take it a level further, and we say, well, if it's really going to hurt your life and your capacity to live, and it's going to make you depressed, well, don't even think about it. I mean, make it that acceptable. Make it so acceptable that you don't even give it a second thought, And in some cases, don't even give it a first thought. I mean, there's lots of people who say, oh, I can't watch the news anymore, it's too depressing. Well, that's spooky, because, like I said, that's essentially just saying, yes, I'm going to lobotomize myself. I'll shock reality out of my brain and replace it with a fairy story. And so that, to me, has always been the danger of religion, is that it is this lobotomizing fantasy that takes all the power of people to do anything constructive right out of their brain. Because everything does become acceptable, and they just wait for the sky daddy to fix it, and I don't have to worry about it. God will take care of it in the end. Justice, I don't have to create that here. No, he'll take care of that later. I'll just do my own thing, and that's all I have to worry about. And that, to me, is just socially corrosive. It destroys civilization. It just makes it pointless. I mean, and that's sort of the thing here. We're not just talking about meaning. Meaning is this, all these words are kind of fudgy. What does meaning mean? And purpose is another word. But it all comes down to, I think, that equation, that thing of accomplishment. We can't escape the fact that we are born into life needing, and that there's this amount of need we won't satisfy even in ourselves, and then in our interaction we end up exploiting other things and creating harm and need in them. We do consume people. We consume, even in just the basic economy, people die digging diamonds out of the ground. I mean, we consume their lives to have a diamond. We consume things, and it just can't be denied that there's a price to that. So life isn't free. It's not just something you just play the game for the sheer pleasure of it. Especially if the pleasure of it is just something you contrive through perception. You just, yep, I'm going to hit the self-retardation button, and that's the end.